On August 26, 2026, a disaster unfolded in the Himalayas that turned a normally flowing river into a devastating wall of mud, rock, ice, and water. Near the Nepal-China border, a massive section of glacial rock and ice collapsed into the Lende Kola river system, sending an enormous surge downstream. Within minutes, roads disappeared, bridges were destroyed, homes were buried under mud, and entire settlements along the river were hit by a flood moving with terrifying speed. What makes this disaster especially shocking is that early reports suggested an earthquake may have triggered the collapse. But later analysis by the US Geological Survey indicated that the seismic signal was actually generated by the collapse itself and the following debris flow, not by a conventional earthquake. The destruction spread across parts of Nepal and Tibet, including the important border corridor connecting Kathmandu with Lhasa. Videos from the region showed torrents of muddy water and debris sweeping through roads, buildings, and vehicles. In Nepal, the worst-hit areas included Rasua, Nuakot, and surrounding river valleys, while Tibet's Girong area was also severely affected. By August 27th, reports said at least 168 people had died across Nepal and Tibet, and more than 1,300 people were still missing, although the numbers were changing as rescue teams recovered bodies and searched through the debris. Reuters reported that nearly 1,500 people were missing across both sides of the border, including more than 700 foreigners. Among those reported missing in Nepal were hundreds of foreign tourists and pilgrims, including 177 Indians and 63 Americans. But the most frightening part of the disaster is how quickly the water rose. In some areas, the river level reportedly increased by around 9 meters in only 30 minutes. There was almost no time for people living near the river to understand what was happening, let alone escape. The flood was not simply water. It carried enormous amounts of rock, mud, ice, and debris, turning the river into something closer to a moving wall of destruction. Roads that normally connect communities were washed away, electricity infrastructure was damaged, and thick layers of sediment made rescue operations extremely difficult. More than 5,000 Nepalese army and police personnel were mobilized, while helicopters were used to search isolated areas and deliver emergency supplies. By Thursday, rescuers had brought 125 people to safety, including foreign nationals. And even after the first wave passed, the danger wasn't completely over. Authorities were monitoring a potentially dangerous dammed lake in Tibet because another sudden release of water could create additional flooding downstream. Heavy rain was also expected in parts of the region, increasing concern about landslides and further instability. So what caused such a catastrophic collapse? The immediate trigger is now much clearer. A massive failure of glacial ice and rock created a debris flow that entered the river and produced a devastating flash flood. But the bigger question is, why Himalayan glaciers and mountain slopes are becoming increasingly vulnerable? Scientists have warned that rising temperatures are changing glaciers and increasing risks from unstable ice, rockfalls, and glacial lakes across the Himalayas. However, it would be too early to claim that climate change alone caused this particular event. The exact chain of factors behind this collapse is still being investigated. This disaster is a reminder that in the Himalayas, danger doesn't always begin with heavy rain. Sometimes it begins high above the valleys, where a collapse that most people never see can send an enormous wave of rock, ice, and water toward communities hundreds of meters or even kilometers downstream. And by the time people hear the river roaring, it may already be too late. This is Beyond Borders Docs, where we uncover the stories behind the world's most extraordinary and devastating events.